So I'm delighted to be interviewing our local naturopath, Leisa Wheeler. She's been a naturopath for 10 years. Leisa worked at Hippocrates Retreat Centre as the naturopath there. She's also the organiser for the David Wolf Tour, the creator of the DVD, The Emotional Aspects of Healing. And she also conducts the Embracing Health retreat throughout Australia. So that's a 6-day detox retreat using raw foods. So welcome, Leisa. Thanks very much for agreeing to be interviewed.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
Perfect. So can we start with just begin telling us about how you got interested in natural medicine and what led you to become a naturopath?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my interest started at a really young age. So I was probably about 5 or 6 when I wanted to be a doctor, not knowing then what doctors actually do, but it was really a call to healing from a really young age. From there, I then wanted to be a vet because I loved animals so much. So I actually went to a high school that specialised in agriculture to fast-track me to becoming a vet. Except when we started chopping animals up, I left that school because that wasn't what I wanted to do. So from there, developed an interest in natural medicine, and it was probably about the age of 15 that I really started reading and studying about principles of nutrition. One of the first books I bought was called The Biogenic Diet by Leslie Kenton, and that was about raw food and food combining. So at about age 15, I was combining foods and annoying my parents with raw food recipes, and started on healing and experimenting on myself with raw food around that time. So that was 25 years ago. So it's been quite a long journey of experimenting and working with food myself. So from there, I didn't really see being a naturopath as a career for me. I had a lot of trouble with confidence in my 20s. I went through quite a few traumas in my teenage years, and that really led me to not have a lot of confidence. So I saw natural medicine as a hobby, as something that I was really interested in just for me. So I studied, I read hundreds of books, I did all these short courses, I did really intensive study on some very, very alternative styles of treatment. And it was only when I started trying to fix everyone around me who really didn't want my advice that I realised that I had to go and get my qualifications and start studying properly so that I could use this.
So can you tell us a bit about your work at the Hippocrates Retreat Centre and how working as a naturopath really integrated with what they were doing there with raw foods?
Yeah, absolutely. It was Hippocrates was such a gift to be able to work at a centre like that. It was, for me, it was like a dream, working somewhere that held very closely to all my own philosophies around health and healing. So when I studied as a naturopath, I was actually really frustrated with the teaching. So even though there were some fantastic elements of the study, there was very little on the body's ability to heal itself. There wasn't much on food as medicine. There was virtually nothing on cleansing and detoxification, or at least not to the level that I'd actually studied to privately. So I found that style of naturopathy moving almost more towards orthodox medicine, where a patient would walk in, they would have a disease, and you would hand out 6 or 7 bottles of supplements that treated that illness. And of course that's a lot healthier than going to a doctor and getting a medicine, but it's still of a pill for every ill type of mentality. And I wanted to work deeper than that. I wanted to get to the true healing. So I really believed that the body could heal itself given the right tools and the right environment. So that's what I wanted to do as a naturopath. So when the opportunity came to work at Hippocrates, I jumped at it, because for me this was true healing. It was using things like juice fasting, cleansing, using raw vegan food, colonic irrigation, saunas, skin brushing, gentle exercise, everything that really gave the body the tools it needed to get well. And that's where I witnessed so many amazing results, and it really solidified for me the path that I was on was the correct one.
Can you tell us a little bit about those amazing results? Like, what sort of things have you been witness to working in that area?
Everything. It was just incredible, and I'm very lucky to have been able to witness that. And I think for me, watching people get well has really made my beliefs so deep And a lot of people don't get to witness that. So their faith in the body healing itself really has to come either through their own experience or passed on from other people's knowledge. But for me to witness people getting well week after week, it really brought that belief home to something that, you know, is very deep within me now, that the body can heal itself. So I've seen all sorts of things, from very severe arthritis where someone is on very strong pain medication, for them to come off that medication in 3 days of juice fasting and colonics. So for me that's amazing, and the person's amazed. 3 days of juices and they're off really strong medication and out of pain. So everything from skin problems, minor skin problems, to cancer, I've seen it reverse. There was one lady who, sticks in my mind. She had very severe lupus, which is considered an incurable autoimmune disease. And she stayed for 2 weeks at the centre. She did the program, and when she went home, she continued on the program until she was cured. And by cure, which we're not supposed to actually say, she had no markers. So the blood test came back clear, the antibodies were clear, she had no signs or symptoms, and she managed to maintain that. So that was a very strong cure. So I've seen a lot of that. We even had one gentleman who came to the centre who 25 years earlier had been diagnosed with stomach cancer. And he was in America at the time and did the program over there. He continued on it for 9 months at home. So that's how strict. He was 100% raw vegan, following the program for about 9 more months. And he actually had a cure as well. And he came back to the Australian Hippocrates for a top-up and told me his story, and it was 25 years later. So, yeah,
wow.
Great stories.
I imagine that must be something that's really great for your clients, to come and have somebody who has experienced, witnessed that range of healing, so that you really hold the place of, the body can heal itself from your own direct experience, not from an ideal that you've read about just in books.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot, because for me to be able to impart that knowledge, it comes from a solid base. Like you said, it's not just out of a book, it's from years of witnessing what happens and what the body's capable of. So for me, being able to hold that belief and be able to educate people on what is possible, then that gives them the strength to be able to try it for themselves. And then when they experience the results themselves, that's the best test they could ever have. But it does take a leap of faith often for people to try it. And quite often you hear people say, I'll do anything to get well. But that anything means I'll do anything except change my diet and my lifestyle habits. I was really lucky to meet people who would change everything in their life to get well. So these people are so dedicated, and they're so beautiful to be able to take on such a lifestyle change, but the results speak for themselves. And for me to be able to be a part of that is a real privilege. Yeah, it's an honour.
So how important do you feel diet is? And what aspects of diet do you feel are like the most important things?
Yeah, good question. For me, diet is crucial, but it's not the only element in healing. So my philosophy goes a little bit deeper than diet only, and that's probably where I may butt up against a few, extreme raw foodists in that way, because my tagline is healing is a journey, not just a raw food diet. And I sincerely believe that that's what healing is. It's not just about food, it's about a holistic experience of health and healing. So for me, diet plays a huge role. So don't underestimate that, but it's not the only factor. So for me, diet is crucial. It's one of the most important things in healing. And when I look at diet, I look at things like whole foods. So foods as found in nature with no human adulteration whatsoever. And that really is getting back to be very, very pure. So organically grown whole foods that are unprocessed in any way. And that is a stretch for a lot of people. They don't know what real food is. We're so conditioned to just filling the gap in our stomach with anything in the packet that we don't understand that there's a difference between real food and a commercial product made to look like food. Okay, so for me, a whole food diet is about organic fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, sprouted grains, fermented foods, sea vegetables, herbs, superfoods, grasses, greens. There's a huge array of real whole foods to choose from, and a lot of it comes down to education. People don't know what good food is, and they also think that if you're eating a raw vegan diet, then you're eating rabbit food, a few lettuce leaves and a bit of carrot. And we know full well that a balanced raw food diet can be amazing when it comes to taste and variety. For healing purposes, that's essential. And there are specifics within a program like that for healing illness. So you may want to be more strict to start with, as in doing juice fasting or laying off the nuts and legumes for a period of time while you're going through a healing cleansing process. And that's where a good naturopath would be able to guide that healing process as opposed to eating a diet for maintaining health. So I see it as two different strategies when it comes to healing. So one will be medicinal and very, very strict for a period of time for a healing purpose, and the other type of diet will be one that is maybe a little less strict, which can encompass more variety of different foods and even be an 80% raw food diet and still maintain very healthful benefits on that type of program. So I see it as two different things. When it comes to healing, I look at healing as a holistic way of living. So when we have an illness, I would see that as a sign that there's an imbalance in the whole person, not just in their diet. And that's where I look at, it being more than just a diet. We're looking at being physical, emotional, mental and spiritual beings. And illness I see as a message that there's something wrong in all of those areas. In orthodox medicine, one of the problems is that they segment the body. So if there's a problem with the kidney, they act as if the kidney is sitting in a petri dish outside the body somewhere for treatment. They don't look at how the kidney is affected by all the systems in the body, from our thought patterns to the skin to the toxins to the fluid levels. They look at the kidney as an isolated element. And I think when we look at only diet, we're only looking again at an isolated element in our whole being. So that seems to me a disservice when we're looking at healing ourselves truly at a deeper level. So I think any illness gives us an opportunity to explore the wisdom and messages that we receive through that healing process, through looking at our emotional patterns, looking at our spirituality, seeing where things aren't working on all levels, rather than just thinking a diet's going to fix it. Because if we just use a diet to fix it, and quite often we can, it doesn't mean we've really got the message. And quite likely something else will come up, may not be the same illness, but it might be something else come up to show us that, we've missed that message. So I think healing becomes a deeper exploration and a personal journey of healing, rather than just saying, well, if I eat this, I'll be better. I think that kind of misses the point in a lot of ways.
So as you were saying, some experts say that diet alone is enough for healing. I'm specifically interested in remedies. When is it that remedies actually sort of come into the whole healing process?
Yeah, great question. I know there are a lot of people there that say diet will heal everything. And I think in the past that was likely to be true before we had some of the severe environmental toxins and stresses and pollutions and problems that we have in today's society. So I think we can go a level up instead of just relying on diet these days. Don't get me wrong, I think food is the foundation, and I don't believe we do any remedy without healing the foundation first. So that's where, as a naturopath, I'm probably a little different to just using food as medicine. I like to use that as a baseline, but I also feel that we can build on that as necessary. So for me, sitting in clinic with someone who is not well versed on food and comes in with an illness and is taking a step away from orthodox medicine, where they could go and get a prescription to cover up their symptom and they'd feel better, they're taking a leap already by seeing a naturopath. Now, if I say to them, okay, well, we'll change your diet and in 12 months from now you're going to feel really well, do you think they're going to stick with it? They're not. There may be a small percentage of people who will do that on their own, but for the majority of the general public that are coming in to see a naturopath, they still want a quick fix. So for me, I don't have a problem with using something like a herbal remedy or a high-dose supplement or whatever it will take to get quick results for that person, so that then they have a commitment to changing their lifestyle. Because if I don't get quick results, they won't come back. And that's my opportunity to work with them to then lay that foundation. So if I can get some sort of result with a remedy, like a supplement or a herb, then that's great. But I won't use that at the expense of changing at a fundamental level the diet and lifestyle. But what I use it for is to get some results so the person makes a commitment. And I think there's room for that. I think there's room for natural medicine to meet people in for where they're ready to come with healing. And if that's the step that we need to take, we can. Now, I do believe that just about any illness is going to respond to food if done properly, but it can take time. And sometimes we just don't have that time. And we need to do something to speed up the healing process.
Okay, so you've also been the organiser for the David Wolfe Tour, and just for those of our listeners that aren't familiar with who David Wolfe is, he's been a pioneer in bringing the shamanic wisdom to the West, and part of that really has been with a focus on superfoods. So what I'm interested in is how you use superfoods in your practice, and where would you look for like a superfood as opposed to, say, like a traditional naturopathic remedy? Yeah, absolutely. I use superfoods quite a bit in practice, and David has been instrumental in bringing awareness to those foods that are really dense in nutrition and offer more value per bite, as it were, than standard foods. So we're really looking at those with medicinal properties. And we do need to eat 3 times a day or more, so we might as well eat foods that are going to give us an advantage and give us a medicinal property rather than just eating to fill the gap. So superfoods can play a big role. And I always prefer food over supplements wherever possible. So for example, and the way I look at it is that superfoods are whole foods. So quite often they're whole foods that have just maybe been dried and powdered, so they're still containing all the elements that came with the original food. Whereas supplements in a bottle are usually made in a laboratory from synthetic ingredients, and they don't have all the cofactors. So I liken it to an orange. We know that an orange has hundreds of bioflavonoids which enhance the activity of vitamin C. When we have a supplement, which is a bottle of vitamin C plus bioflavonoids, we get 3. We get rutin, hesperidin and quercetin. So instead of hundreds, we get 3. So for me, eating the orange will be of an advantage all the time because we get all of the synergistic nutrients which enhance each other's action. So that's what I find with superfoods. We're not just eating them because of one element, we're getting the synergy of all the phytochemicals and nutrients which enhance each other. So they're always going to be superior over any synthetically produced or bottled product. So when I'm looking for using a vitamin C with people, I'll use a camu or an acai berry. Where I can, I'll use spirulina powders. I will use goji berries. And these I bring into people's lives as for medicinal purposes, but also just as part of their normal eating habits. So we start to actually introduce these things in recipes that are day to day. So they're getting the quality in their meals as well as using them for medicinal purposes. In your DVD, The Emotional Aspects of Healing, you share about the strategies and techniques that you have found useful in your journey. Would you like to share some of those with us?
Yeah, thanks. For me, healing was always going to be about part of the emotional journey as well as the physical. And having quite a few traumas in my teenage years meant that I really had a lot of work to do on myself. That did impact me physically. I ended up with very poor adrenal function and thyroid function, due a lot to the stress and perfectionist tendencies that I had early on. And part of that journey was really working on myself. And so for me, I explored just about every aspect of emotional healing that there was. So this was in the late 80s when the New Age was really starting to develop. And because I felt a lot of work to do on myself to heal from some of these traumas and different things that had happened, I started exploring everything. So I went from, counselling and traditional therapy through to things like karmic healing and spiritual healing. I did a lot of meditation and inner work. I did voice dialogue or inner child. I did rebirthing. I did NLP. All sorts of techniques and strategies, and most of them were really aimed at gaining insight into myself and looking at my belief patterns and starting to look at life from a different perspective. And that for me was absolutely invaluable. So it took me in a whole different direction, and I really became a different person over time. And a lot of that was just understanding why I was reacting the way I was, and why I was believing certain things about myself and about the world. And as I learnt to heal those through different techniques, I came to a different perspective on life, and one that I feel is very important to get to. I think when we drop the baggage, when we're able to heal some of those traumas and limiting beliefs and negative thought patterns that we hold, we start to operate from our natural place, and that is of joy and compassion and love and kindness and gratefulness. And all of those things come naturally when you drop some of that baggage and actually learn to love yourself. And it sounds very cliche, but it is about acceptance, because before we can give to the world, we really need to fill ourselves up first, and that comes with acceptance. And it was a long time coming, and there's still different issues that come up and need to be resolved, but I feel I'm in a much happier, healthier place right now than I would have been had I not delved into that work over the years. Yeah, part of being healthy, I believe, is about holding a healthy attitude as well. And I've met many people in the healing industry who may have a very healthy body, but they don't have a healthy attitude. And to me, that defeats the purpose. If we want to be a shining light of health, we need to show that in the way we present ourselves and the way we deal with people, as well as having a very fit, healthy physical body. For me, you can't separate them. If we're going to be healthy in body, we need to be healthy in mind, emotions, and spiritually as well. You can't have one without the other.
So you have a particular interest in women's issues like hormones, adrenal fatigue, thyroid imbalances.
Yeah.
So as I go throughout the world, I'm just hearing more and more people suffering from these. I was just wondering if you could tell us what women can do to help themselves with these issues.
Yeah, there's a lot that can be done naturally, and it's been one of my key areas of interest because I have suffered myself. And I think often naturopaths do tend to specialise in an area that they have experience with, which is great because there's so many areas we could work with. To have experience really gives depth to what we do. That wasn't what drove me to become a naturopath, my own health, because I was interested from such a young age, but it certainly led me to delve into this area a lot deeper. So I find that issues of adrenal fatigue are becoming more and more prevalent, and that's for a few reasons. One is the stressful lifestyles that we appear to be living these days. So there's from financial pressure to work pressure, relationship, environment. There's so much pressure these days, and our adrenal glands were not meant to have to deal with that type of lifestyle. We were, I think, meant to maybe gather our food for a few hours a day and then have leisure time. And we don't do that anymore. We hunt and gather 16 hours a day, and it's relentless. So that puts a lot of pressure on the adrenal glands to keep up with just day to day. So we can go through a couple of stages with that, and one is where we are under adrenal stress and we have high levels of cortisol, and that takes its own toll where we're running on excess energy. We might be able to burn the candle at both ends, but we can only push that so far, and then we may go into a fatigue or an exhaustion. And when we hit that, that's when we'll really notice the symptoms. So we're tired getting out of bed, we can't make it through the day without needing a nap or half a dozen coffees or a sugary drink or food to boost us up, and they're telltale symptoms that we're in exhaustion. So one way of healing that is really to do a good hard lifestyle review. Where are we doing too much, taking on too much, and do we have to do everything that we have in our lives? Is there a way we can step back and get a little bit more balance? And that's very important. Sometimes we get so caught up in the frantic activity, we forget that we don't have to do everything. We can actually choose what it is we do. So that can be very helpful. Having a really good whole foods diet helps, because if we're whipping our adrenals with coffee every day, it's going to result in more fatigue. It may help in the short term, but it's not a long-term solution. So we need really good quality foods to give our body the nourishment it needs to get through the day. We can also help with different herbs like your Siberian ginseng or withania or licorice root. There's some beautiful herbs that actually nourish adrenal energy rather than whipping it or stimulating it too much. Things like meditation, having regular massage, having even a candlelit bath, walking on the beach. These things energize us and regenerate the adrenals, which is really important. We often don't take the time out to look after ourselves. When the adrenals are a bit poor, the thyroid can often go down as well, or the thyroid can have its own set of problems. The thyroid gland regulates our metabolism and our energy. It can act as a neurotransmitter in the brain. So thyroid problems, we often see weight gain, we see depression, we see a sluggish bowel, hair loss, severe fatigue. And when those signs are present, we can often look at the thyroid as having some type of impact on our health. The thyroid uses iodine to make thyroid hormone, and that is really deficient in today's diets. So there's not many people that actually eat sea vegetables today, and that's an important source of iodine in our diets. Also, stress affects the thyroid gland, mercury from mercury amalgam fillings, fluoride in our water. There's an enormous amount of chemicals and toxins that affect thyroid function. So cleansing, detoxing is important, and nourishing the body with the right types of foods. With these areas, I've also found, of course, an emotional component to those. And for me personally, the adrenals were about perfectionism and holding myself to really high ideals that were stratospheric and not living up to them. So that had a huge amount to do with my own adrenal fatigue. And when I recognised the patterns I was playing and what I was actually doing to myself, I could actually stop doing that and start the process of healing. But what I wanted to try and get across today is that even if I had have had the most perfect diet and herbs and supplements, if I hadn't changed my outlook and what I was doing to myself, I wouldn't have gotten well. So that was really important, to look at all the aspects. With the thyroid, for me at least, it was a lot about speaking up and speaking my truth, learning to be assertive, which was something that didn't come naturally at all.